Hello, everyone. This is Neal Davis from Digital Cloud Training. I'm here with Brooks Seahorn, our Chief of Cloud Education, and we're here to talk about the new AWS Associate Level certification called the AWS Certified Data Engineer Associate. This exam is currently in beta and is due to be released in the spring of 2024. So we have both taken this exam recently. We've taken the beta exam, and in this video, we're going to give you some tips on what you need to do to prepare for this certification. And as a quick sort of jump ahead, this is not an easy certification at all. Okay, so Brooks, let's get started with what is this exam all about?
Thanks for having me on, Neal. Yeah, this exam itself was really interesting because, and I think you just already alluded to it, it was harder than I anticipated. It is really a data engineer exam in its truest sense. You need to be a data engineer, or at least have some experience, a little bit of experience, because you're going to be hit with a lot of questions that really dive into the service. Again, we were in the beta exam, so it's a little bit different in terms of formatting. There's a lot about the core services of AWS that were in it. Being able to understand like data pipelines. I'm trying to remember some of the monitor and troubleshooting. Altogether, you got 170 minutes, 85 questions. It was quite the exam. I don't know about your experience with it, Neal. Maybe you can, when you come back, you can speak about it. But I used almost every minute of that exam, just like going, wait a second, did that make sense? If you're interested in taking it, it was originally started on November 27th of this year, 2023. And it's going to close officially on the 12th of January, 2024. So that's your limit in terms of being able to get into the exam. I think on that one, the standard is going to be coming out in April of 2024. So you can register the month before in March, but April is when you'll be able to take the final exam, which should have 65 questions, probably a little bit less time, but will become a much more tightened up exam. Now, the one thing about the beta is this: if you do take it and you're like, how did I do? It's going to be 90 days from the close of the exam, again, January 12th, 2024, before you find out your results. So at the earliest, you're looking at April 11th, something like that, of 2024, before you find out how you did. And I, don't want to know how I did because I don't feel great about it. Neal, how did you feel about the exam? What was your take on it? How did you kind of go in? Were you surprised by it, the subject matter, anything like that?
Well, the short answer is yes, I was surprised by it. I did find it challenging. Now, I come from a solutions architect background, so many years working as a solutions architect, I'm very well versed with many of the data engineering services and tools, but I'm not a data engineer. So, I understand things like with databases, which database to use for a relational versus non-relational, or a use case like online transaction processing or online analytics processing. But in this exam, there were a lot of very data engineering questions. So obviously, that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it very data engineering oriented because that is the job role that this certification is for. Okay, that's obvious. But here you go. The thing is, I found that the easiest associate certification for me was the developer associate. Now, I'm an architect. I'm not a developer. I don't write a lot of code. And yet I found the developer associate the easiest of the three current associate certifications. Likewise, I found the DevOps professional exam easier than the solutions architect professional exam. So I wasn't really that sure how difficult it was going to be until I got in there. When I got in there, I found it was very difficult. There was a lot of stuff in there that I just did not know. A lot of stuff like, really needing to know how to structure SQL statements. You need to know a lot of services like Glue, Athena, and Redshift in a lot of detail. We're talking practical knowledge of how to build out catalogs, form certain clauses for in your search parameters, setting up schemas, using ETL, extract, transform, and load, all those sorts of operations. So yeah, I found it quite difficult. What about you, Brooks? How did you find the exam?
I did too. And the thing is you actually took it 2 days before me, so you kind of gave me a preview. So as I was stepping into it, I was like, he wasn't kidding. This is a bit nutty because, for example, I did do a lot of database stuff because, my career started back in 2000. And in shops like that at that time, you did everything. So yes, I was a developer, engineer. I was also the Exchange 5.5 administrator, so running the email and doing some database work. So I've got some familiarity with it. I've done it, but it's just so surprising to see in an exam like that, what is the correct select statement? And you're like, oh, that has nothing to do with AWS. That's like core knowledge of a data engineer. That is core knowledge. or CSV versus Apache Parquet, things like that. Which one has better performance? Wow, that really surprised me. And I tell you, the other one that really surprised me, Neal, was when I got to the questions where they were starting to talk about things like, here are the ports open on the security group. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is right into Arc Associate. And then I think the one that really, really floored me was when there was a question concerning a transit gateway. Turns out I think it was a blinder in the exam. Who knows if they'll leave it in there? But still, I think it sort of rung with me. You really need to know the fundamentals like SAA, Solutions Architect Associate. You need that knowledge before you step into this exam. And so if you're a database person, if you really are a data engineer, you're going to need that knowledge. You're probably going to do okay. The other direction, where you're just an Arc Associate and you're going to go sit this exam, you may have a tough time with those database questions and some of those things that you just don't expect. So that was my overall, and that really just surprised me.
Just quickly, I would say that one of the tips there for people who want to take this exam, and you've really alluded to it there, is do the Solutions Architect Associate first. Yes. At a minimum, there are some questions in there, for instance, around pipelines, like code commit popped up a couple of times.
Yes, it did.
So you might even need to know some of the stuff from the Developer Associate. My pathway through the free associates was always the Solutions Architect Associate, do the developer, then do the SysOps, because it's the hardest of the free.
Right.
No longer is that the case. Now I'd say do those three, then do the Data Engineer Associate. But look, at a minimum, if you have a lot of data engineering knowledge, just do the Solutions Architect Associate first, because as you said, there's stuff like interface endpoints, VPC endpoints, transit gateways, S3 event notifications, the standard stuff that you find on the SAA exam all the time. Yeah, that comes up as well. So you don't want to get tripped up on that just because you're too focused on data engineering itself. so you need that broader knowledge as well as the very engineering specific knowledge.
Yeah, like for example, if you don't understand EBS volumes and choosing the right one based on the requirements, this thing is going to trip you up. Because normally I would think a data engineer, a data scientist would just say, give me an EC2, blah, 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 put me this big a volume on it. And that's all they say. And then somebody's actually giving it to them. Where on this exam, they're talking about persisting the drive in snapshots of the EBS volume and things like that stuff. Normally, I don't think a data engineer would be getting into. So if you are a data engineer, do the SAA. It'll do you a world. You should know it anyway, but it'll do you a world of good. That was a great way to put it too, Neal, because I was going to ask you next, sort of how could you get ready? And I think what you just said there is probably the best path forward. Do the SAA, do the dev, because there's stuff from dev in there. SysOps, you should just know, and then you might be ready to get started into it. I think that's a great path through. If you're already a data engineer, and if you're working in AWS, I spoke to a good friend of mine, Chris, who is a data scientist, a real deal data scientist. He doesn't work in AWS. He has a lot of data engineer knowledge, but there's no way he could pass this exam. Even though he's a true blue scientist, knows amazing and can do amazing things with data, it's not going to work. You need to have the AWS knowledge. I absolutely think, I think what was funny about that, going back to the data side, was the whole thing that you and I both ran into, I think, when we started seeing things like vacuum. That to me was a trip, because it was like, vacuum, what does that even mean? If you're not in data engineering, you can't do it. Tell me how you ran into that one, Neal. What did your exam prompt you with, if you can remember when you hit the vacuum?
Yeah. Well, obviously we can't give away too much on what exactly we saw in the exam, but at the same time, we want to maintain the integrity of the exam, of course. But I can give you some sort of ideas of the sorts of things that you need to know in order to sit this exam. And yeah, knowing which vacuum command to run on a database is definitely one of those tips. Now, I haven't got a clue, so I definitely would not get any questions correct in relation to that particular topic. But yeah, that's one of the sort of things that came up. As you mentioned a bit before, Apache Parquet, you really need to know what Apache Parquet is. It's file format, and that's something that you really need to know. It pops up quite a lot. And so understand what the benefits are and why you might want to convert to using that system format. There's a lot of different services here. I would say that the key ones that just you really got to know inside out would be Glue, Athena, Redshift. We've got a few of the Apache products like Kafka, Spark, Flink, Ranger. They popped up. Kinesis.
Airflow. No Apache Airflow.
And AppFlow as well. So some of those newer services there. So those are some of the services that come up quite often. Definitely, maybe the core would be Athena and Glue. as well as Redshift. I saw a lot of questions asking about
Oh,
those
yes.
specific services. So you really got to understand the various different processes using things like Glue Data Catalog, Data Brew, using workflows, using ETL, extract, transform, and load into different destination databases, data warehousing, lots and lots of topics, lots and lots of questions on those subjects.
Exactly. You really hit the head with that list you gave there. And not only that, but I think the thing that surprised me about the exam too was how much they were talking about integration between the services. For example, using Event Scheduler, and then there was going to be a Redshift, and then something about Athena, and then something about QuickSight. And so you had all of these things together in one question. So it really is like you can't just be too focused on one or two products like Glue. You really need to understand the suite of products that they have available in that data sort of space in order to be successful on this exam. It was surprising. I don't know how else to say it. It was a surprising exam. I thought it was going to be easy. I thought I was going to knock it out of the park, but it is not. And it's because of that really special knowledge that you've got to have. I think one of the services that really surprised me more than anything else was how much Glue came into it. I don't want to say the number, a large number of Glue questions. Did you see the same sort of thing, Neal?
Exactly the same, yeah. Glue with Athena, of course, coming up quite often. Yeah, those were two of the top services.
And I think the other one that I'm not surprised now that I think about it was QuickSight. For those of you who don't know what QuickSight is, it's a really nice visualization system built into AWS where you can give it a data backend and create really nice front ends to your data, really nice front ends, stuff that normally would be really hard and would take a lot of time to get straight. I was surprised to see how much it would come in there. I really was. But in these total solutions that they were trying to put together and put to you and say, is this the right way forward? That showed up quite a bit. So it was nice to see. I didn't get anything too deep on it. It was just there. It was almost like it made me even more nervous. Like, wow, this thing is out of control. I don't even know what's going on with this thing anymore. One thing I wanted to go back to that I was really surprised about, again, were those SQL commands that I saw, Neal. As somebody like yourself who has never dealt with data, how would you even think to yourself, like, how would I approach this if I wanted to be able to do it? Do you think it's a thing where you need to take like a SQL course? It was that much? Or, I mean, just how was your approach to it? What did you think, particularly as a non-data person, when you saw that particular question?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know how to answer those questions because I know some very basic SQL commands, but when it gets a little bit more complex, I've just never done that. That's never been my job role. So it's not really the sort of questions. Well, if you're not prepared, it's not the sort of question where you can have a look at it and say, well, let's work this out logically. Now, I can do that with a lot of questions, or just through my experience with AWS, I can eliminate certain things. But I found quite a few questions on this exam where I wasn't able to follow that approach. I wasn't able to eliminate easily, and I wasn't able to just work through logically to try and come up with the answer. I was just missing the knowledge, and that's all there was to it. So, yeah, I think stuff like SQL, you've definitely got to understand your SQL, running SQL queries, how you can search databases and perform various different transactions. It probably is a case of going and maybe watching a few YouTube videos on that and finding, I'm sure there's plenty of good subject matter out there that you can utilize.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that was the thing that got me about it was, even though I've done SQL select statements forever, that was just, creating views so we could quickly pull data. There were some things in it I'd never seen before. And I was like, I've never seen that type of select before, where no free ones here, folks. I'm going to stick with Neal. We're not going to compromise nothing. But it was basically a select statement with a very interesting where clause in it. Like, I'd never seen a where clause done like that before. So it was unusual. It was different. And it makes me think, even though I've done it for a long time, I too probably need to go out and brush up on my SQL if I really wanted to go into this exam and feel confident about what I was doing.
One of the things that comes to mind is that recently AWS decided to retire the AWS Data Analytics Specialty Certification. And just as they retired the Data Analytics Specialty Certification, they come out with the Data Engineer Associate. Now, of course, there is quite a bit of overlap between these two. So I'm thinking that AWS saw that there was a bit more demand in the data engineering versus data analytics. And, there is overlap, but there's differences between those job roles. However, I can't help but think that this exam felt a little bit more like it should be a specialty level exam versus an associate level exam. Again, if I was a data engineer, maybe I wouldn't feel that way. Maybe it would be a bit easier and I would feel it was on par with the others. But to me, it felt quite a bit harder. What's your thought in terms of how it compares to the other associate level certifications?
I'm going to agree with you completely. Honestly, with my knowledge, I've done AWS for a while, everyone. When I sit like the ARC associate, I can almost think my way through it. Like I can really hit a question, get lost, do some, that's definitely not it. That's definitely not it. It's between C and D. D looks like the better solution. So I can think my way through a lot of these things. Same thing with the dev. SysOps was pretty tough. I was really surprised by it. But this one by far and away leaves them behind. This is not that associate feel. I'm hoping this isn't like a preview of things to come with the associate exam, because if it is, we're about to see them all get upgraded in a major way where you've really got to have much stronger knowledge in order to be able to sit these. And that's what I wanted to ask you. Could it be that it was a beta exam? And so they really threw the big stuff at us. One thing about the betas is there are questions in there. They will go back and look at it and go, everyone missed this question. Or one of the things you can do in the betas, obviously, is on a question. I did this quite a bit. You can stop and do a comment. And that's what I did. I commented on a lot of questions. Having been at AWS, I kind of get the process of what they were going through. So a little bit of inside knowledge. So I write back to them, here's what I'm thinking maybe you went wrong with this one, because I can't figure this out. It doesn't feel right. It's a bit too wordy. So I think with some of those, I would expect them to come out, Neal, and maybe it would get a little bit easier. In the version we saw, if they stick to it though, this is something else. This is not, okay, you're going to be an associate, but this has got a completely different feel to it. I would say this thing could almost become like really exclusive. Like if you've got it, you really know your stuff to be able to pass it.
I do think you're right that it's probably going to be a bit easier when it comes to the final exam. As you say, they throw in a lot of questions, and what they're going to do is they're going to take a lot of data away from the beta, and then they're going to have a look and see from their analytics which questions were just a bit too hard and which ones were a bit too easy, perhaps, and they find some kind of medium. I don't know exactly how they do that, but that's essentially, at a basic level, I think that's the process that they're following, so that they can then get the exam to be the right level. So at the moment, probably it would have felt a bit harder, maybe quite a bit harder than the final one will. It remains to be seen when it's actually released next year, so we'll have to wait until at least April and see what people say at that time. But yeah, as you say, for now, it certainly felt like quite a hard exam.
I'm looking forward to going back and trying to take it again. There's no way I passed it, everybody. No way I passed that thing. That was something else. I don't know how much time we got left, so I wanted to ask you about this, Neal. You kind of mentioned it already, but I really want to give people this kind of, in a nice box, in a bow. If somebody is going to get ready for this exam, going forward, knowing that it may be March or April before they take it, and they take the final instead of what we're doing with the beta. Again, could you sort of recap for us some of the things they really need to be thinking about, and especially stuff where, maybe you feel like they should take another course, complete course first before even diving into some of these services?
Yeah, so we talked about SQL. You certainly need to know your SQL commands. You're going to need to understand a lot of services at a very operational level, that data engineering point of view towards services like Glue and Athena and Redshift, which come up a lot. Airflow and AppFlow, you're looking at Amazon MSK, step functions as well. That's something you need to understand, the various different wait states and how to use step functions. ETL, lots of questions on ETL. And then some of those Apache products which run on AWS as well, like Kafka and Spark and Flink and Ranger, they popped up. Kinesis, you'll need to know Object Lambda, so the various different sort of data engineering concepts related to some of those very popular AWS services. Data sync, data pipeline, data exchange as well, even Amazon EKS. So what can you do to prepare? Well, at this point in time, there's not a lot of training out there, and the training that has started appearing, some of which appeared before the beta exam was even released, it may well be perfectly good. I'm not sure. I would just caution that any training that comes out before the exam has actually been released may not be well aligned with the actual requirements of the exam. You can't just look at the exam guide and work out how to create a training course from it. So, I mean, we've certainly seen that. We've looked at the exam guide. We've gone into the exam. The exam is very different to what I expected it to be based on reading the exam guide. So I would just caution that, the training courses that have come out super early, watch out. They might not be aligned with the exam. They could be useful. They might help you to a certain extent, but don't rely on them completely. You can go and, of course, have a look at the exam guide. It will help you a bit. So have a look through there, understand which services come up. Then also check the article that we're going to link to this video, because we're going to write up some of what we've talked about today, some tips on which services, what sort of facts you want to know. And we'll be coming out with our own practice test course very soon as well. And then subsequently our video-based training once we understand more about this exam and what it's going to look like in its final form.
Absolutely. And by the way, if you want to get some more information now, like you can always go out to AWS's website. You can check out the AWS Certified Data Engineer Associate page, go through it. Now, this is for the beta, so it's not quite there, but you can also look at what they're sort of looking in terms of the exam guide. And this is great. And by the way, for anyone who was listening to this and went, there's no way they could ask about all those different services in this exam. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, they start listing out the services that you need to feel comfortable with. And you can see it is quite a bit. They're not playing around with this exam. So if you're going to take this, just be wary. The out of scope is like 1 page. Then there's pages of in-scope services. So just be aware of that and understand that Neal just put it to you as plainly as possible. It's quite a bit. Make sure you're okay with understanding AWS. You understand the basic services. You understand the basics of data engineering, things like SQL, before you even try to walk in and start studying for this. And yes, be careful of some of the training material out there. They came out way too early. And Neal and I have been doing this for many, many years already. And so when we get surprised, it's a surprising situation. So just be careful.
So that's it for this video, guys. Make sure that you like this video if you enjoyed the content, and subscribe to our channel. We're going to bringing out many more videos like this and giving you some more insights and tips on various AWS certification exams. So thanks, Brooks.
Okay, bye. Bye, everybody.